Today's topic is image representation. So, what is image representation? So, after image segmentation, which we saw in the previous chapters, what we get is a raw region. Okay, from the image, a particular region is segmented out. Okay, that is in terms of raw data that is given for an object representation or descriptor. Okay, so we represent the object or the region which is segmented uh, from the segmented day image. Okay, so the representation are of different types based on the boundary or that is external characteristics, or based on the internal characteristics it will vary, right. So here there are different types of representations that is based on external characteristics, which depends on only on its boundary. Here the focus will be on the shape of the region segmented, and the second one is internal characteristics, that is based on the internal pixels. Here the focus will be mainly on the colors and textures. So after representing the image in terms, either in terms of external or internal characteristics, we go for describing the regions, okay, for the computer to process. A region may be represented by its boundary by using described by some of the features such as length and regularity, and these features should be insensitive to translation, rotation, scaling. Okay, so here both boundary and regional descriptors are often used together. So whatever I told in terms of description is given here in terms of diagram. The segmented image what we get is a raw data that is given for representation. After representation, like representation is of two types: external, based on external characteristics, it mainly focuses on shape, and then internal characteristics, it mainly focuses on the regional properties such as color and texture. And after representation, we give that for descriptors, computation of descriptors. Okay, so there are different types of representation: chain code representation, polygon approximation, signatures, boundary segments, and skeletons. We'll see one by one. So these are mainly used in order to represent the region which is segmented from the image. So first let us see about chain code. So in order to represent a boundary, it is useful to compact the raw data. Okay, so normally raw data contains a lot of pixels. So in order to reduce that, we go for this type of representation, chain codes. So chain code is nothing but a list of segments with defined length and direction. There are two types of chain codes. One is 4 directional chain code, and the one is 8 directional. Okay, so here is the chain codes given. 4 directional chain code, how it looks: it consists of x-axis 0, and in the right hand side it is 0. Okay, and vertically if you move from the center top, the value is given as 1, and if you move left side horizontally, the value given as 2. If you move downwards vertically, then the value is 3. That represents a 4 directional chain code. Okay, that is, we give values based on the direction in which we move, right. And next is 8 directional chain code. Here there are 8 values given starting from 0 to 7. From the center, if you move horizontally right, it is value is 0, and if you move diagonally top towards right, then the value is 1. If you're moving vertically from center to the top, the value is 2. And if you move left side top, okay, from the center, the value is given as 3. And left side horizontally, then the value is 4. And down left, uh, if you're moving, then the value is given as 5. Vertically downwards is 6, and down left the value is given as 7. Okay, this represents an 8 directional chain code, right. So based on this, let us consider a boundary given in the first diagram, digital boundary with some resampling grid. Okay, the resamples are shown in the second figure. So if you see in the first top figure, then a lot of dots are given, right? It represents the boundary. So the boundary or sampled, having lot of samples are shown. So if we are having lot of samples, then we require a lot of data to represent it. Okay, that is a cumbersome process for computation. And also if there is any noise or which is going to affect the boundary, okay, that changes the direction, the value of the chain codes. So in order to avoid that, what we do is like we downsample the given boundary samples. Okay, if you see in the downsampling is reducing the number of samples. So if you see the second figure, the number of dots which are the samples have been reduced. Okay, so which requires only few values to represent these boundary. Even though the shape looks almost similar, only thing is the number of samples have been reduced, which reduces the computation, right? Okay, the third figure shows based on the second figure, the values are assigned as per the direction of movement. Okay, so if you start with top corner as 0 if you're moving towards right, based on the chain code given in the previous case, that is if you are moving towards right horizontally, then the value is 0. Okay, this is what's represented in the third figure, top value. Okay, if we are moving towards right, it is 0, again right 0. If you're moving downwards, the values are 3 based on the 4 directional chain code. Okay, as we are moving vertically downwards, the values are 3, and if you are moving left horizontally, the value is 2. We can check it up here in the 4 directional chain code. If you are moving towards left, it is 2. So that is why here it is down. You can see after all the 3s, if you're moving left, the value is given as 2. Similarly, it goes on, right? Okay, this is according to 4 directional chain code values. And then second, if you're going to represent by 8 directional chain code, right, and the fourth figure bottom last shows the same boundary represented using 8 directional chain code. We can see the values, right? If you're moving horizontally from the top, it is 0. If you're moving towards left down, then the value is 7. You can check it up here. From center towards downwards left, the value is 7, right? So that is why in the top of the figure after 0, the value is 7. Okay, so based on the directional change, the values are given here. This represents the boundary representation using chain codes, using 4 directional and 8 directional chain codes. Okay, so why do we do downsampling? As I told you, to reduce the code dimension and to remove small detail along the boundary, right? Here, okay, a different shape given here is somewhat different from the previous shape which we saw. Here you can see based on the direction change, it is 0 0 all 3s. So how the chain codes are written at the bottom last. Okay, that is 0 0 how many 5 3s 2 3 etc, and end up until we end up at the top value, that is 1 here. Okay, and afterwards a directional is used. In a directional, starting from 0, which is that is a blue dot, we start 0, then 7 666 5 5 5 3 3 etc. So this is chain code represented. So while we are representing, we write down in terms of clockwise direction. Okay, next, one of the problem here in chain code is object rotation. So if you rotate the object, we'll have different chain codes. Okay, the solution is we use difference code, that is coding with the difference of direction, so counterclockwise. Okay, so what we do, that is difference of direction. So how will you find the difference of direction? We'll see here. Okay, so representation of boundaries by using difference of direction. To normalize with respect to rotation, first differences can be used. We can check here. The first value example given is 1 0 1 0 3 3 2 2. That is the chain code according to 4-directional chain code written here. The corresponding first differences or the difference code is given as 31333030. So how we can get this value is from moving 1 to 0. In the first chain code, the value first value is 1, second value is 0. So when you want to move from 1 to 0 in 4-directional chain code given in the bottom diagram, we can check for moving from 1 to 0, we need to take 3-directional changes: 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 0. Okay, that is or 3-directional changes in counterclockwise. That is why the first value is 3. Next, in the chain code, after 1 0 we have 0 1 combination, right? So for moving 0 to 1 in counterclockwise in 4-directional chain code, only one directional change is required from 0 to 1 in counterclockwise. So it is given as 1 in the difference code. Okay, so next, from moving 1 to 0, we know it is 3-directional change. From 0 to 3, check it up in 4-directional chain code given in the bottom diagram. For moving from 0 to 3, okay, we have to take 3-directional changes, that is from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3. So 3-directional changes. Okay, so which is given here. Similarly, we have to continue until we end up with the final value, right? This is the difference. Okay, by doing that we can avoid rotational changes or the changes in the values of chain code due to rotation. Next step of representation is polygon approximation. So the polygon approximation, what we do is determine which points on the boundary to use. So first we have to determine which points on the boundary to use. Then here minimum perimeter polygon is used. What we do in minimum perimeter polygon is we have to choose an appropriate grid and allow the boundary to shrink. Okay. Next, here is the polygon approximation diagram is given. Okay, so the polygon is given. The polygon, that is the boundary, is given an example we have taken. Okay, this are represented in terms of grid in the second diagram. Okay, the same boundary, and with gray color boxes denotes it is following the boundary, right? And next is by using minimum perimeter polygon in the third diagram, we are allowing the boundary to shrink, right, based on the grid from the second from the second one. Okay, so we are minimizing the boundary by using the lines, okay, that is shown in the third diagram. Okay, and fourth is a region shown in dark gray results from enclosing the original boundary by cells. So the whole boundary, inside the boundary, is replaced by dark gray color. Okay, next the fifth one denotes the same dark gray boundary or the region is given with different dots, that is white dots, black dots, etc. So white dots represent that is white okay, that is the outer boundary is denoted with white dots and inner boundaries are denoted with black dots in the case of second bottom image. Okay, next is, after that, what we have done is this same black dots are moved diagonally outwards. That is the last one, right? You can see at the top of the last image the black dots are moved diagonally outside, right? So similarly, everywhere it is down, wherever you got the black dots in the inside border, it is moved diagonally outward, and a shape is formed by joining white and black dots afterwards in the last image. Okay, so this is polygon approximation. So we use a polygon to shrink according to the shape of the border, so that the number of number of values used for representing an image is reduced. Okay, So there are different types of polygon approximation techniques. One is merging technique, another one is splitting. So first, merging technique, what it will do is it merge the points along a boundary until the least square error line fit of the points merged so far exceeds the threshold, and record the two end points of the line and repeat steps 1 and 2 until all boundary points are processed. You can see here in this image. Okay, so first thing is we have to merge points along the boundary until an error exceeds a particular threshold, right? So if you see the first image with the red line, okay, it started with value somewhere at the top, right? Okay, and the red line ends at topmost vertically, right? So there a small boundary is protruding outside this red line. So we can see that images that where the value is exceeding the threshold, right? Okay, in that case you have to draw you have to join these 2 points. So similarly, the same procedure we have to apply for each and every part of the boundary. In the second image, again we start with the end point in the previous case and drawing finding a point where the value exceeds the threshold, then joining the 2 points. Similarly, we continue until we end up with completing all the boundary. Okay, this is a merging technique. Okay, again it comes under polygon approximation. Then splitting is we subdivide a boundary segment into 2 parts until a specific criterion is satisfied. Okay, so find 2 points on the boundary that are farthest away and draw a line. So in the first image we find 2 farthest values, that is AB, and a line is drawn. Next, splitting line divides the boundary into 2 boundary segments. So splitting this, it divides into 2 boundary segments. Next, for each boundary segment, find a point on the boundary that has a maximum perpendicular distance to its corresponding line. Okay, so for the splitting line, we have to find a maximum value from that line. So C and another value at the other side of the line AB denotes a value farthest from the line. Okay, so you have to draw that line. Dotted lines denotes that. Okay, next, and the third is draw 2 lines joining the point and 2 endpoints respectively of the corresponding splitting line. So here we join the points AC and CB, B to another point, that is it could be D, D and A, right? So that forms a polygon shape. Similarly, this procedure has to be followed throughout the covering of boundary. Okay, so that we'll end up with final shape, the boundary shape we'll get using this splitting technique, right? Next technique used for representing the image is signature. It's in one-dimensional functional representation of the boundary, right? So here we have to plot the distance from the center to the boundary as a function of angles. So consider the first diagram as a circle, okay, where the center is joined horizontally to the end, that is to the circle. A line is drawn from the center to the circle horizontally, and we find out the angle, like moving the radius from the center throughout. Okay, distance from the center to the circle, okay, that is R, which we plotted in y-axis, and x-axis in the second diagram denotes angle, right? The angle is changing in the first diagram. If you move the angle, right, if you move the R array, okay, or the ray, if you're moving, the angle will be changing, but the length remains constant because the radius remains constant throughout the circle, right? So it is denoted as value A here. The A denotes the amplitude. The amplitude remains constant, that is the length from center to the circle radius remains constant even though the angle is changing. So this is an one-dimensional representation of the boundary. So this is called as a signature. Next, if you see the signature of another image, which is a square, okay, if you find out the angle and the length of the array arc from the center Okay, then the length will be varying. So the angle is varying, which is shown in the x-axis of the second diagram. If the angle is varying and see the length, the amplitude is also varying, right? The maximum value is root a and minimum is a, and based on the rotation of the ray r, okay, there is variation in its length because it's very short from center sometimes, or it will be more away from the center. Okay, so signatures are invariant to translation. That is an advantage of signature. Okay, it depends on the starting point. The starting point could be the one farthest from the centroid, I think. Okay, next the shape can be represented by using skeletons. Okay, here we use graphs to represent the shape. The first is a rectangle represented using skeleton of shape like V and inverted Y. It looks like a skeleton, right? By drawing dotted lines we can form a graph or skeleton. And similarly, in the second image, a small protruding on the right side center we have, that is extended by extending the graph at the center. Okay, the dotted lines at the center. And the third one image consisting of that is extension on the right hand side, which is shown by the graph. Next, we have other types of descriptors, boundary descriptors. For simple boundary descriptors, we can use length, diameter, and basic rectangles. Okay, so another boundary descriptor is the shape. Okay, order of a shape is the number of digits we use here. So here 4 digits we are using in the down diagram. So order is 4. Okay, and the second diagram we use 6 digits, so order is 6, which is shown in the diagrams below. And so as previously we saw in chain codes, here the chain code value is given for the square shape in the first image down, 0, 3, 2, 1 based on their directional changes. We have the chain code here, and the difference we find out based on the difference counterclockwise directional change from first that is 0 to 3, the direction changes 3, and from 3 to 2 direction changes 3, and so on. Okay, the reference code is based on the change in the direction. And next, shape number is, we have in the difference code we have to find the minimum value. Okay, so in the first case there are all values are 3, so there is no change in the shape number. But in the case of second image of order 6, we can check in difference code. The difference code is 303303. Here the minimum value is 0 after 3, right? The second value is 0. So for shape number we start with 0, and we have to continue the remaining value from the difference code. We have to write as such in shape number, it is 3303, and after that we again for the move circularly to the first. Okay, and we have 3, right? So this is shape number. This is how we use a shape number to represent a boundary. Okay, so similarly there are other shape numbers of different orders. Okay, that is of order 8. Everything is of order 8. Okay, even though order is 8, the digits are 8, right? But 4 directional chain code is used here based on the directional change. So we can check here. The first one is the chain code first, aligned denotes the chain code, and second is difference code based on the direct change in the difference in the direction in counterclockwise, moving from 0 to 0, so on, right? And next is the shape number. Shape number, we start with the minimum value in the difference code, that is 0, and followed by the remaining values in the difference code. Okay, and in the second diagram here, downwards we can see the shape number. The starting 0 is at 6th position in the difference code, and after that we have 30 followed, 30 value followed. So after 0 we have 30, and next the remaining values are from the starting of the difference code, that is 33133. Okay, this so these are all different examples to describe the shape number. Okay, And same boundary descriptors using shape numbers can be done like this. The first one is some boundaries given, some shape. Okay, so here we draw a rectangle. As I told you, boundary can be described using rectangles. So we draw a boundary descriptor that is rectangular, and after a rectangular case we draw grids. In the third diagram it shows we draw grids, and from the grids we sample out points to form a shape somewhat similar to the first shape given. Okay, from this, based on the directional change, we form the chain code. Okay, from chain code you can find out difference code, then shape number, so on. Okay, thank you.